So one of the things that's really important to be successful in life is to make decisions and take action. And if you think about your life right now, everything you're currently experiencing is a result of the decisions you made and the actions you took in the past. And, if you want your life to be different, you have to do something new. What are you passionate about? Everyone seems to have things that call to them. For me, and when I started out, it was self-esteem. I started out as a high school teacher. A lot of times things you do for free when you're first starting out actually lead to paid gigs. I'll do a lot of fundraisers, and at fundraisers, you find a lot of CEOs of companies that end up hiring you to do what you did for free at their fundraiser for their charity. I always say, if you're not willing to give it away for free to start, you probably don't want to do this anyway because you're not passionate about it. It happens that you weren't expecting, and it makes you laugh, gives you goosebumps, it makes you cry. And so I think people, they Velcro concepts to stories. People just sit around and tell stories forever around campfires.
Hi there, Siddharth Rajsekar here, and this is truly an honor and privilege for me to be interviewing the one and only Jack Canfield, who's inspired millions and millions of people over the years in the personal development space, in the coaching space, and he has truly transformed lives. So first of all, before I even get started, Jack, thank you so much for giving your time, for being a part of this exclusive interview with you.
My pleasure, Siddharth. Thanks for having me.
Welcome. So the intention of this interview is to really help knowledge givers get in the right frame of thought, and also to be able to step into a zone where they can truly contribute with their knowledge to the world in the most powerful way. So I have a series of questions that I have for Jack, which is going to help you, all of you watching this, to really tap into your power to contribute with your knowledge. So the first question that I have for Jack is it's this: there are many people who want to get into the space of coaching and in the knowledge business, but what I've noticed is a lot of people get stuck in finding their topic. So the first question is, if someone is not sure about their topic or niche to coach others, what do you think is the best way for them to find that?
Well, I think there are a number of things to look at. Number one, what are you passionate about? Everyone seems to have things that call to them. For me, and when I started out, it was self-esteem. I started out as a high school teacher in Chicago at an all-black inner city school, and I quickly became aware that my students weren't motivated to learn. And even though I was teaching history, and I was teaching Black history, which was novel back then, there was still this sense of low self-esteem, not believing I could be successful. They hadn't seen other people in their community be that, so there was no model for them. And so I became much more interested in how to motivate my students than I was in actually teaching them history. And so I studied with a man named W. Clement Stone, who was worth $600 million. He was a friend of Napoleon Hill, who wrote Think and Grow Rich. And he had a foundation called the Achievement Motivation Program as part of the Jesse B. and W. Clement Stone Foundation. And so that became something I was fascinated by and interested in. And after I became really good at it, I got the Teacher of the Year award for the students. And then the school asked me to teach other teachers what I was doing. And so I became this self-esteem expert, this how do you motivate kids expert. And it was just out of my experience of trying to solve a problem. And so many of us come from different backgrounds, different interests. If you're a woman and you've been interested in women's issues, then perhaps you want to coach about empowering women. Or maybe you want to coach in the corporate world about how to be more supportive of women in the corporate environment. Perhaps you are someone that's interested in parenting, or perhaps you're someone who, I'll give you an example. There was a woman who took my Train the Trainer program, and she was a mortgage broker. And she was looking to get out of mortgage broking and do something totally different. And what she realized at the end of the training, and she became very proficient at it, teaching the success principles that I wrote a book about and that I do trainings on. And so she realized that her audience that she knew the best were mortgage brokers. She knew the language, she knew the challenges, she knew the industry, she knew what people were up against. And so she went back and started coaching mortgage brokers on how to be more successful. And today, only about 5 years later, she's running mastermind groups where people are paying $25,000 US dollars for a year-long mastermind group. And she has several of those. So she's making, close to $1 million a year, just doing something that she understood. And so you look at what is my knowledge base? What do I care about? Patty Aubrey, who's my business partner, who literally started out as my secretary 30 years ago and now is the president of the company. She does a lot of work with women. She's developed a group called Goal Friends. So it's like girlfriends, but it's goal friends, women with goals. And a lot of women have never been taught to set goals. She has another program called Permission Granted, like women are waiting for permission to step up and step out. We're now developing the Success Principles for Women as an ongoing, it'll be an online program, digital program, which is, evergreen, where people just sign up and do it. And we're also doing a live version of that on the internet as well. So really, you look at, what do I know? What do I care about? What matters to me? Perhaps there are things that really upset you in the world, and you say, I want to be part of the solution for that. And so some of the people I know that I've trained are doing free trainings for homeless people, for women in battered women's shelters, for people that are coming out of prison or maybe are still in prison. So it really depends on what you're passionate about, what you know for sure. A lot of us know things we don't realize we know. Mark Victor Hansen, the co-author of the Chicken Soup for the Soul series with me when we first started it, used to keep saying, he'd say, you need to write a blog about that. I say, Mark, everyone knows that. He says, no, they don't. I didn't know that until you told me. So a lot of us have information, knowledge that we don't realize we have. Maybe you're someone who's attracted to crime novels. I mean, you could start a crime novel blog, a crime novel podcast, where you're interviewing people, true crime, writers and people that are detectives and so forth. So it really go with what interests you, go with what you're passionate about. And, for me, as I said, it was always self-esteem. Then that turned into one of the things about self-esteem. I discovered self-esteem has three aspects to it. If you believe you're competent and that you're lovable, and that your life matters to somebody, you're significant to somebody, that builds self-esteem. And so competence means you can create success. You know how to solve problems. You can meet your needs in the world. And so that one niche of those three areas became my lifetime work, if you will. There was a recession in 1993. First Gulf War happened, huge recession. And so all the money in education where I was focused dried up. There was no tax money for it. They weren't hiring consultants. So I had to pivot to the general public and do seminars for just the average, person out there. And so that was the beginning of a company called Self-Esteem Seminars, which morphed into the Canfield Training Group. And so now success is primarily what I teach. Although recently, this is really interesting, I just recently got into essential oils, which are these oils that have been distilled from plants and that have now, we realize, have these amazing transformational properties for helping you heal past memories, to go into forgiveness, to raise your level of vibration, which is important for the law of attraction, which is another area that I became fascinated with and was in the movie The Secret and so forth. So for me, it just kept evolving. And I think for everyone that gets into this work, as you learn something new, maybe you go, wow, I want to teach NLP, or I want, like Tony Robbins does, or I want to teach, EFT tapping. And all of a sudden, 5 years later, you find yourself in a totally different domain, if you will.
Absolutely. So what you start off with self-esteem evolved into success and success principles and so many other, the evolution, it happens naturally based on your areas of inclination. Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, areas of information, areas where you find yourself more successful than others, things, your own interests evolve over time. And when you develop this expertise in a certain area, then you can brand yourself in that area. Like I call myself the America's #1 success coach. Yeah. And so that's become who I am and what my work's about. And that's the brand that people know me by now.
Yes. Amazing, Jack. And, most people, even I've seen in the community here, is they want to find the perfect niche. And do you think that could also be like a stumbling block? Like it's just picking one, going with it, and then evolving that as they go further? Because most people I've seen, they wait for that right moment, or they want the validation whether this is the right niche or not. So what do you have to say?
I think you have to make a choice. Not all choices lead to the perfect place. Sometimes you go down a cul-de-sac and you find out that there's a swamp with alligators in it at the end of the road there, and it's not working. And then you try something else. But I think that start with what you love. There was a wonderful quote from a friend of mine that he told me. I don't remember who told him, some famous person, but it said, don't ask what the world needs, ask what makes you come alive, because what the world needs is people who've come alive. And so,
Yes.
you know, when you're passionate about what you do, when you're excited about it, you know, then people pick that up, because your vibration, your enthusiasm, your confidence is as much of a, I don't know, I should say sales dimension as your expertise. And
Yes.
so if you're teaching something that you don't really care about, and a lot of corporate trainers end up doing that in a corporation. You work for a corporation, they say, now we're going to teach, you know, this, and you've got to go teach that because you work there. But I think in general, the reality is, you know, you know, also you can look at who inspires you, you know, and if you're inspired by that, that tells you have an excitement about that person, that way of teaching, that information they're teaching, that content, whatever. You know, some people are attracted to Tony Robbins. He's got this incredible energy and enthusiasm, and, you know, just beats his chest and jumps all over the stage and everything. And a lot of people are attracted to that energy. There are other people that are more calm, that are more meditative, perhaps, you know. There's a lot of very famous educators that are teaching meditation and mindfulness and things like that, that are much more calm. You know, I kind of fall in the middle. You know, I'm not beating my chest, but I do talk really fast because I'm excited and I want to get in as much as I can.
Nice. Amazing, Jack. Next question I had is more about, you know, the attributes of an effective coach, because I understand knowledge is one part of the game, but also being able to represent that knowledge in a way that can create or make a difference in the person who's receiving that knowledge is a different skill altogether. So what do you have to say are the core attributes of an effective coach?
Well, I think the first thing is you have to be walking the talk. You have to be living what it is you're teaching and coaching about. So if you're teaching people they need to be 100% responsible for their life, not blame, not complain, not make excuses, you need to be living that. And so because your vibration of that, your truth of that as you're speaking will come through to people. And so if you're lying about it, you know, if you're just teaching something you read out of a book, but you're not living it, I think that comes through to people. They can tell that. And so I think that's the first thing, is to be a product of your own product, if you will. If now, I don't think you have to be a millionaire to teach abundance and prosperity or to teach money consciousness. I mean, that if you're on the path and you're growing in that area, you can certainly learn a whole lot about investing and about money consciousness and so forth, and be teaching that. You know, I certainly did way before I was a millionaire, because I understood the principles and I was applying them in my life. You know, I'm only making 100,000 a year. I hadn't made $1 million yet. And 1 year I've made 6 million. And 1 year I sold the company for 63 million. So it's allowed me to be able to talk with authority about that. But I think also you can be learning as you're teaching, but be as much as possible living in that integrity. People can pick up someone that's not real, and kids are the best at it. You know, I don't trust that person. Mommy, you shouldn't trust him either. And so I think that's the first thing I would say. The second thing I would say is that if you're going to be a coach, you need to be a good listener. I think a lot of people jump in too fast. They don't really hear what's going on enough. They learn a couple techniques. Someone once said, if the only tool you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Mm-hmm. And so basically, you know, the more tools you have and the more ability you have to listen. I've literally, in my early career, jumped to conclusions about a problem someone didn't have because I cut them off too soon before I really found out what was kind of going on with them. Mm-hmm. So I think practicing listening is really important too. I think also being a constant student, you know, Tony Robbins came up with this phrase, C-A-N-I, constant and never-ending improvement. So, you know, I am constantly watching YouTube videos, watching TED Talks, reading books. You see a lot of books behind me. I've read 3,000 books. Now I'm 75 years old, so there's a lot of years to do that. And I don't know why I kept track, but I did. And so a little OCD, I guess. But the reality is that I've learned a lot, and you keep learning and you keep learning more. I always have this belief that there's a faster way to do everything. You know, if we can get there faster with less effort, great. And so, I used to have people beating on pillows in training saying, I hate you, to their parents. And then along comes NLP, and we realize we can do that through fantasy. And then comes tapping, and we just have to tap on some acupuncture points. And basically we can disappear negative emotions. That takes a lot less time, a lot less struggle, and a lot less scary for people. So constantly be learning, be a student, I would say, is really important as well. And one thing I think, there's two kind of coaches, I would say. There's pure coaching and there's content coaching, or process coaching. So I can do both. You can come to me and I simply say, what's going on? What do you want help with? And you tell me and I can work with you. But the coaches that I train primarily, and we have a coaching service as part of our company, and most of the people I've trained in our train the trainer program do coaching as well as speaking and training and workshops. And in that essence, we have a set of principles that we know. I use this metaphor of a combination lock. If you know the combination to a lock, doesn't matter if you're black, white, young, old, went to university or didn't, smart, not smart, the lock has to open. And so there is a set of numbers, if you will, to use the metaphor, of principles that if you do them the right way, in the right order, in the right time, basically what happens is you can unlock this thing called success. And so our coaches that we train learn how to walk people through a sequence that includes getting in touch with your life purpose, taking 100% responsibility for your life, no blaming, complaining, excuse making, getting a vision for what your ideal life would look like, turning that into goals, using affirmations and visualization. So we take them through a very lockstep program. And in each case, we find out, are you using affirmations? Do you understand how they do? You're doing it, but are you doing it correctly? And so forth. So that coaching can take 5 weeks. It could take a year, depending on how much they already know. And we can walk them through where they don't know, and then provide ongoing support. One of the big issues, I think, for a lot of people, and this is where coaching comes in very handy, is a lot of people don't know how to hold themselves accountable. Most people watching this are what I call solo entrepreneurs. They don't have a boss. So they often will do the easy thing in the morning instead of the hard thing. And we know that often the things that are most complicated and challenging are the things that produce the greatest success. If success were easy, everyone would be thin and healthy and wealthy. Not the case. So basically, I think a lot of people, because of so much information available, know what to do, but they're not held to the fire, if you will, and coaches can help people do that in a loving and sometimes, confrontive way to help people be more accountable to getting through what they need to do. I think a couple other aspects, they need to come from service. People can get, are you in this for you or are you in this for me? And they want to know that you really care about them and that you're there to really support them in being successful. And I think that just comes through. And I think most people go into coaching and training and authoring, they want to make a difference. But I think it's important that you let people know that for sure. And I would say for trainers, people need to be good storytellers. They need to be able to really, and I think that's what Chicken Soup for the Soul did for me. It really taught me what's a good story, because I edited over 20,000 of them. And basically, a story has to have a beginning, a middle, and end. There needs to be some obstacle that they've overcome, something, where there's if you look at every great movie, there's an arc where someone starts out and then the hero's journey starts because there's some challenge to them, either it's an internal challenge or an external challenge. And then there's a resolution at the end. And we have this thing called the chicken soup moment, where something happens that you weren't expecting, and it makes you laugh. It gives you goosebumps. It makes you cry. And so I think people, they Velcro concepts to stories. People just sit around and tell stories forever around campfires and on our front porches and so forth. And I think that people really need to master that. And then also, what are your processing skills for helping people deal with their stuck places? Can you help people identify and release limiting beliefs? I think the two things that stop people more than anything is that they either have limiting beliefs that are unconscious they're not aware of, or they have fear. And then sometimes just lack of knowledge, lack of know-how, lack of skill sets, lack of proper mindset. But those things one needs to be good at to help people break through those and to, have these transformational moments. And finally, I would say for trainers and teachers, you've got to be able, and coaches too, really, you have to know how to lead an experiential exercise so that people can make their own ahas. I can tell you something and it can go in one ear and out the other. You can take notes about it, put it on your shelf. You end up with what I teasingly call self-esteem. You didn't really change.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, if you come up with the awareness, if I ask you a series of questions that lead you to an aha moment, or if I have you do something kinesthetics, physical, and you have an awareness from that, or I teach you a new mindfulness technique and you become mindful of something you were never aware of before, or meditation technique where you have the insight, or guided visualization where you start to get images that are unique to you, answering questions, then you are much more invested in that answer, that concept, that new principle, than if I just spoke it to you. So just speaking at people, there's enough information on the internet right now. Most content's out there, but being able to help people, what's what I want, integrate that concept and Velcro it to their mind, that's a real skill that if you develop that and you have that quality of ability to do that, you're going to be very, very successful. And finally, I would just say, be articulate, learn how to speak your concepts in a way. One of the things people tell me is, it's a talent of mine, is I can take complex ideas and teach them in a very easy to understand way, using metaphors and stories and, you know, things like that. So I think that's valuable as well.
Amazing, Jack. Thank you for sharing on what does it really take to be an effective coach. It's just not about the knowledge, it's about all these other attributes that really, you know, create that kind of an impact. Yes. All of you, if you're watching this, there's a special link below if you want to know more about Jack's Train the Trainer program. We have an exclusive deal only for members of this community, so you can go and have a look at that. Next question, Jack, is how have you structured your coaching framework? Like once somebody goes through the Train the Trainer program, how are they going to be equipped with the tools and the skills for them to be able to create an impact on their mentees? Yeah.
Well, I think two things to start with. Number one, what I started to say was like, what's the sequence of these success principles that one needs to know? And we start with 100% responsibility. And so what happens is, as they go through our Train the Trainer program, what happens, they're learning these principles by being, sitting in front of their computer, doing it online. And it's like we recorded a live training. And so they're literally sitting in a chair with me on stage teaching. And then I will lead the group through an exercise, which they actually do as well. They have all the downloadable PDF sheets for the worksheets to fill out, for the questions to answer for themselves, etc. And so everything that they're being asked to teach, they're experiencing first. I don't think anyone should be teaching something they haven't experienced first.
Yes.
Like, you shouldn't be taking people into the jungle if you haven't had a guide take you there yourself, and you know where the tigers live and the rhinoceroses are, and the pit, the quicksand is, and so forth. So I think it's a responsible thing to do that. And once they've gone through all this and understood the sequencing, understood why it's important to create a safe space, how do you get people to feel safe enough to open up and share deeply what's really going on with them? Because transformation can't take place if people aren't authentic and real and open to what's going on. And so we'll take them through the sequence of 100% responsibility, clarifying your life purpose, creating a vision that's aligned with fulfilling that purpose, setting specific goals, learning about affirmations and visualization, which a lot of people have somewhat surface knowledge of, but don't really understand at the deep level. And then looking at action. How do you get into action? How do you keep yourself in action? That's the bigger question. How do you stay motivated when you're having setbacks, when you're having failures, when the world's not responding as fast as you'd like to all the things you're trying to either do or market or sell or, accomplish in the world, etc. How to ask. Most people are afraid of rejection. And so they don't ask for what they need. They don't ask for people to enroll in their courses. They don't ask for money. They don't ask for, time, for mentoring, whatever they need. That's a very important thing to figure out and work through. And we teach all that. And then how do you ask for feedback? The reason Chicken Soup for the Soul was so successful is every story in the book that you read was read by at least 20 to 40 people and graded on a scale of 1 to 10. And if it wasn't a 10, the question was, what would it take to make it a 10? And if we could edit it up or make it better, we would do that. If not, it didn't get in the book. And so some of my stories that I wrote never got in my books because it didn't have the impact on the reader that we wanted it to have. And so, I teach this question on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the quality of, and then you fill in the blank, this seminar, this podcast or webinar we're doing, me as a trainer, me as a coach, me as a husband, me as a father, me as a son, me as a coworker, your experience of, this real estate transaction, whatever it is. And then anything less than a 10 gets the follow-up question, what would it take to make it a 10? A lot of people never ask that question because they're afraid of what they're going to hear, but you can't get better. I always tell people, if my wife isn't happy with our relationship and I don't ask her about it and she doesn't tell me, I'm the only one that doesn't know, and I'm the only one that can fix it. She's told her mother, her sister, her girlfriends, people online at Starbucks, whatever, and it doesn't help me or her. And so feedback's important. Perseverance is important. Having a mastermind group, an accountability partner. How do you turn your inner critic into an inner coach? So there are all of these things that we teach that you then learn. And then we teach you something called the Canfield methodology, which is how do you sequence things in a coaching call or in a presentation, whether it's online, which much more of us are doing right now. Had we all invested in Zoom about, February, we'd all be very rich right now. And the reality is that when you're starting, can you give a story that will capture people? Can you give a statistic? Like for example, this is true. 38% of all women in California have been sexually abused or accosted or raped by the age of 18. Now that's an amazing figure, 4 out of 10 women. So if I open with that story, I have your attention. Now we can talk about empowerment, self-protection, standing up, self-defense, any number of things that we can do, self-esteem. And so what happens is that you've got to capture people somehow. Maybe it's a good joke, whatever it might be. And then you have to introduce your concept in a way that is engaging for people. You have to tell a story that's going to Velcro it to their mind. You need to have an exercise that you do with them. So basically they now engage the information. If online you have a poll, you have people enter something into the chat, you ask them questions and answer it in the chat and so forth. So there's ways to keep people engaged. And then you have to be able to debrief what happened. Did people get stuck? Can you process them through the stuck place? And then when you end, do you have some way of wrapping it up so that they remember? And then a call to action. How are you going to implement this in your life? And so that's a segment. That might be 20 minutes of a 1-hour seminar, or that might be the whole 1-hour coaching call. But basically we walk people through and teach them all that, teach them how to do guided visualizations, teach them how to lead meditations, teach them how to do, we've got modules now, online training. Like right now I'm looking at the camera. This is very good. Occasionally I'll look down like this to see, because you sent me the questions in advance and I thought about them last night, so I would give the best answers, meditated on them and so forth. I'm not as engaged when I'm looking down like this. And a lot of people do their whole talk looking at their keyboard, So there's things to learn like that. Can you get people involved? There's now games you can play with people, energizers you can do online when you're teaching. We're teaching a course right now, 500 people. It's called the Coach Club. It's a 4-month course. We have 500 people from 12 countries, and we have them dancing. We have them playing games with us. We have them doing deep breathing exercises, pranayama, whatever. So all of that is part of learning about engagement online, which is different, similar to what you do in a training room. But I can't get people up and have them do shoulder massages with each other, things like that. So we have to learn how to, and a lot of people are coming up with great ideas for how to do all this, and we're constantly learning. And then we share new modules in the program so people stay up to speed.
Amazing, Jack. Thank you for sharing. I think this is, one of the most comprehensive coaching programs on the planet. And Jack, you've been doing this for many years, right? Like how many years since you started the coaching side, the Train the Trainer program?
Well, I started a program about let's say 30 years ago called the Facilitation Skills Program. It was primarily working with teachers in schools and universities, teaching them how to facilitate this kind of learning in the classroom. And then when the recession happened in 1993, that's when we moved toward doing stuff with the general public. And people kept saying, you've got to teach us how to do this. We want to do this. And when it really started was about, I'd say, well, the online part started about 10 years ago when we were in the Gulf. I was doing seminars in Oman and Kuwait and Bahrain and Iran and places like that. And people kept saying, we can't get visas to come to the United States. We can't afford it. Your president won't let us in because we're Muslims. You know, all these kind of issues were going on. And so we decided, you know, in order to have impact in the world, which we wanted, we were going to have to take this program, which we were only doing live up until then, and make it into an online program. So we recorded 2 weeks, it was 14 days of recording in live training. And basically then edited it. Took us a year to edit it and put in interstitial material and develop new modules for online so it worked better for online. And we keep adding modules, as I say, for enrollment and all that kind of stuff that you need to know how to do. And so that's how that all came about and when it started. But the live stuff, 30 years training trainers.
Amazing, amazing, Jack. So next question is more on projecting into the future. Like, you're one of the veterans in the personal development industry and you've helped millions worldwide. And as you connect the dots backwards, you might have seen various methods, modalities, media evolving in this space. So according to you, I mean, where do you see the coaching and training industry move forward, especially now during these times? And I can tell you, like in India, it's actually booming now. The coaching and training industry, what was probably 5 or 10 years back in the US, is now everyone is aspiring to become a coach. So where do you see this moving into the future? Looking at,
well, I've watched that evolution happening in India because, as you know, I've been coming to India for, I don't know, 15 years, something like that. And I love India, by the way. I just spent the entire month of February in Mumbai at an Ayurvedic clinic with a man named Dr. Naram, who's an amazing doctor. And so basically, I think it's evolving in a lot of ways. I think COVID-19 has created a lot of us sitting at home in front of computers like we're doing right now. So we've had to learn how to do this by Zoom and Crowdcast and all the different platforms that exist out there, you know, Google Meetings and so forth, and learn how to do that. Learn how to, if you're using slides, how do you get them up there and get them on the screen and so forth. And I've gotten very good at that as well. And I think that that's going to be a wave of the future. We're seeing, you know, a lot of people talk about, you know, when this is over, what's the new normal going to be like? And I actually think it's going to be the new better. And I'll tell you why. I was, you know, when COVID-19 hit in America, I would say it was March 16th is when everything shut down. You know, all these governors come out and said, you know, no meetings of more than 10 people. Then it was no meetings at all. And here I am doing live trainings. This is my business, right? And we've had to cancel. Like, we had $800,000 in deposits that we would have had to return to people if we couldn't pivot them into online courses we already had or online courses we were going to create, like our new coaching club, which is virtual, but it's live. You know, it's us meeting with people like this as opposed to things that have already been pre-recorded. And so it was very scary. And so literally I had my sales team on the phone with 800 people over the course of 3 days, the scariest 3 days of their life, because they realized the future of this company hangs on their ability to convince people to pivot into an online course. And they probably convinced 87% of the people to do that. So we're okay. And then we developed this new online program. We signed up 500 people. So we're very okay at the moment. But I think we're going to see more of that. And why I call it the new better is that in this online course, we have people from 17 countries. And they don't have to get airfares. They don't have to pay for the plane flight. They don't have to pay for a hotel. They're not away from home. You know, they put in a couple hours every week. You know, we do a 2-hour seminar. We have office hours where they can come in and do Q&A. We have a couple expert calls every month. But literally, you know, putting in an hour or two a day, and then they have the rest of the day to do what they want to do. They're not down. All this money didn't get spent, and they didn't have to travel anywhere. So we're actually getting more people enrolling for our courses now than we were doing them live. So that's kind of part of the new better. And the other thing that happened was a lot of companies thought, I'll give you one example, Bacardi, which is a company that makes rum. They had hired me to come in and do a training on the success principles for their management team. And what happened was they couldn't do that because I had to go to Bermuda. All the travel was locked down. People couldn't get in and out of Bermuda. And so what we decided was to do it as a webinar like we're doing now. And I would do this keynote, not just for the 400 managers, which would have come in internationally from all their places for their management team, but we had 4,000 of their employees, because their employees were all working at home. They said, well, if he's going to do this online, let's do it for everybody. So 4,000 people saw me. So I have much more impact, probably sold 1,000 books on Amazon.com because of that. And I didn't have to go anywhere. I mean, I walked down to my office, which I'm in now, and I did it. It was over. You know, an hour and a half later, we're done. And I didn't have a day flying to Bermuda, a day to fly home, a day to have to be there. So for me, that's called knew better. And I got my full fee.
Mhm.
And so it's like, I think a lot more of that's going to happen. And I think that's good. There'll still be live seminars. There's going to be conventions and conferences where they need motivational, inspirational, and informational speakers. But I do think that we're going to see more of this kind of thing happening in more online courses. Having said that as well, I think we're also going to see a lot of people that are able to deliver one-to-many as opposed to one-to-one in the coaching world. Because a lot of coaches coach one-to-one. And like we have a coaching program, as I said, right now with 500 people in it. Patty Aubrey, who I mentioned, helped develop Goal Friends and the Success Principles for Women and so forth. She does these mastermind groups. Sometimes she's in front of her computer 4 and 5 hours a day. She has like 12 people in these elite mastermind groups paying $5,000 each. And literally 3 days a week, that's all she does. And the people are having amazing success. And enrollment, almost everybody flips over and does it again for the next 12 months or 12 weeks, and next 12 weeks, next 12 weeks. And so I think we're going to be seeing a lot more of that as well. And what we found is that if I'm coaching you and there's 11 other people, when we tell the other people who wants to go, half of them say, I got what I needed just from when you were coaching Siddharth. So basically it's less time consuming.
Yes.
It's more lucrative for the coach. And depending on what you're teaching, what you're coaching, what kind of coaching you're doing, like with tapping, we find that everyone can tap along. So you could be tapping on a belief you have or an emotion like anger you want to get rid of. And there's something called borrowing benefits, so that everyone else is tapping along with you and they're getting the same value that you were getting. And so people are clearing up, 5 or 6 or 7 different issues in their life in one coaching call, because everyone has different stuff they're bringing up, but you're all getting the value of it. So I think that's powerful as well. And I think we're going to see a lot of that as well.
Amazing.
And I think, as I said earlier, I think there's a ton of information out there, but people need support in applying that information, in making sure how to apply it to their own unique situation and make sure that they're being held accountable. If I have some things I need to do and I'm a solo entrepreneur and I don't have anyone to report to, I put it off. But if I know I'm going to talk to you tomorrow and you're going to ask me, did I do it? I'm going to do it, because it's just, I don't want to be embarrassed of not done it, So it's like paying your taxes. If the government didn't say, send it in by this date, no one would ever get around to it. And so having that accountability, I think that's going to be a big part of what we see in the future as well. Let me see if there's anything else I wrote down here.
Yeah, amazing, Jack. Yeah. So it's the new better. It's definitely growing. And in India, it's booming. I mean, we have everyone getting into this coaching, consulting, collaboration. And leading to the next question is, when so many people are getting into this industry, they want to become a coach, trainer, speaker, even in the online space, applying their online techniques as well. The flip side of this is there could be like a sense of competition or even the copycat syndrome. Everyone wants to become just somebody else. So what do you have to say on this? Like, what should someone be mindful of when they get into the journey, so that they're able to be unique and not just anybody else doing the same thing? Yeah.
Well, I think you're right that everybody's getting into the space, and a lot of people get nervous about that. There's so much quote unquote competition.
Yes.
But for me, I'm excited about it. Because it's one thing for Tony Robbins, who just did I don't know if you heard, he did a seminar for 22,500.
Yes, I saw that. It was amazing.
Yeah. So there's always going to be the Tony Robbinses of the world, and the Lisa Nicholses, and the Bob Proctors, and the Brian Tracys, and the Jack Canfields. And so we're going to be way up here at the top of this pyramid, sending out signals like a 50,000 watt radio station. However, the real application is going to occur with coaches on the ground, working with people locally who are going to be doing the actual day by day coaching, the application, dealing with the objections that come up, the fears, everything. And so the more coaches there are, the better. It's like, and I think people are going to relate to different people. You know, I
Yes.
mentioned the woman in the mortgage industry. She can speak to that industry. She has credibility in that industry. Someone else might be doing real estate, and someone else is investing. Someone else is doing nutrition or health or fitness. One of my friends, I don't know if you've heard of him, Eric Edmeades, does something called Wild Fit. It's a great program for creating a plant-based diet and being really, really healthy. And so what happens is that I think if you find the thing you're passionate about, and you teach it in a way that is unique to you, meaning that your own personality comes through. Like some people have a great sense of humor. Some people, like John Gray, who is known for Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, probably one of the top 2 or 3 relationships experts in the world, has a great sense of humor. And so, you know, John's brand is you're going to have a lot of fun while you're learning about relationships. And that's attractive to people. Someone else like Alison Armstrong, who's also a coach in the relationships area, is much more serious. But a lot of people love her because she's a woman teaching it rather than a man teaching it. So people, you know, we hear about the law of attraction and the idea of attracting things you want into your life. But there's also the law of attraction that who you are is going to attract like-minded people. You know, I always used to say in Santa Barbara, if you go down to Main Street, we actually have a street called Main Street, and you go, it is the main street. And what happens is there are restaurants and bars from the top end of the street all the way down to the bottom. And it's kind of socioeconomically, the rich people are in bars and restaurants at one end of the street, and the people that are the bikers and the homeless people, they're down at the other end. And so people are attracted to the same kind of people they are. And so some people are attracted to me, and some people are attracted to Tony Robbins, some people are attracted to you, and some people are attracted to other people. And so I would just say, be yourself. Be as authentic as you can be. Don't try to be Jack Canfield. Don't try to be Tony Robbins. Don't try to be, you know, someone else because you think they're cool. The main thing is be yourself. And then you're going to attract people that need to hear what you have to say, because your journey is unique. You know, we all could teach success, but your stories of the obstacles you overcame, the principles that helped you, the books you read, etc., that's your unique story. And it's different from mine. It's different from anyone else's. And so I think being real, being authentic, being vulnerable, and then you have to be in the marketplace. You have to be on Facebook. You have to be doing, you know, Instagram live and Facebook live things. You have to be recording those, and, you know, so they're archived. You have to have a Facebook channel, or at least be doing Facebook videos that people can find. You have to be on LinkedIn. You have to do all these things that are out there. Do a blog that's print for some people who like to read rather than listen. You can have a podcast. You know, a podcast can be 10 minutes. Doesn't have to be an hour of me interviewing someone famous. In fact, that model is getting old. And it's like, there aren't enough experts to go around anymore for all the podcasts that are starting. But what you can do is share your point of view. You just read something in a book last night that touched you. Share that. You know, you just read a newspaper account about something that ticked you off. Share that. You know, you found a new product or a new service or a new whatever. People want to know about these things, and you're developing a relationship. And if you haven't read Gary Vaynerchuk's book called Jab, Jab, Right, Left Hook, or whatever, Right Hook, you know, that's exactly what I learned when I was in kickboxing class. The reality is that you have to give value, and then you sell. Give value, and then you enroll. And so a lot of people don't know that, and they're not doing social media correctly. But you must have a social media presence in today's world. People look for you. And if they can't find you, on Wikipedia, you know, whatever, then you don't. It's kind of like you don't exist. And so you have to have a Facebook page. You have to have all these things out there, and then what you do and how you do that. Like Seth Godin is brilliant. He's wise. He sees through things really well. That's his niche. Someone else they all inject humor into it, as we said, or someone else teaches you a little meditation technique. Or so do something of value that's related to what you are passionate about, and then you develop a following, and then you'll have that unique differentiation. And also, you know, write a book about it. A lot of people think that they have nothing new to say, like everything's been said. It's not true. Your experience with that has not been said. So I think everyone should have a book too. We can talk about that.
Yes. Thank you for sharing, Jack. Yeah. So that leads me to the next question is, are books still doing well as before? You know, I know you've sold so many millions of copies around the world, but when you're looking at the patterns of where the world is going, what do you think about books? And what do you think about other media? Yes.
I think this is not totally true for everyone, but a lot of the younger people are not reading as many books as they used to.
Yeah.
I actually went to a wedding recently, and this guy said, "What do you do?" I said, "I'm an author." He said, "I don't read." I said, "You don't read books?" "No." "Do you read newspapers?" "No." I said, "Where do you get your news?" He said, "From Comedy Central. There's like the Daily Show,
Yes.
that kind of thing." And that's okay. But there are a lot of young people who read as well. And but there are also a lot of older people who still read. So there's a lot of people reading books. I mean,
yes.
Millions of books are getting sold. What's true is more books are being written because everyone has a computer they can type a book on when they're not busy.
Yes.
And I recommend that. If you're going to be in this space, write a book. Doesn't have to be particularly profoundly new. It just has to be you wrote the book of your understanding of these things, and you can borrow from other people, just give them credit. And this is, your book. And I think you want to write a book for several reasons. Number one, it gives you credibility. You're the author of the book. I have a dentist friend who wrote a book called How to Have $1 Million Smile. Now, a lot of dentists, a lot of dentists know how to do orthodontics and give you $1 million smile. But he's the only one who wrote a book called How to Have $1 Million Smile. And so he can say, I wrote the book about it. And for most people, if you've written a book, they think you're amazing. And so I would recommend having a book. And it doesn't have to be long. It can be 100 pages, a lot of white space, whatever, but you now have a book. And you can also do a multi-authored book where you have 8 or 9, 10, 12 people, chapters. That way you don't have to write as much. You're all out there marketing the same book. It's helping the other 11 people in your book because you're putting your contact information, your website, what you do, all that stuff in there at the end of your chapter. So the book is something that gives you credibility. It's a brochure that's much deeper. I've had numbers of people literally call me up and say, I was in a bookstore. I was looking for a speaker for my company. I saw this book called The Power of Focus that you co-authored. I thought my people need more focus. And I ended up getting a $30,000 speaking engagement out of that. Nice, so having that book, sometimes as people pass around, people find you that way. The second thing is if you do live seminars, when we do that again, it's something you can sell in the back of the room. And if you sell it for $20, $10, $20, whatever, I've sold as many as 1,000 books to 6,000 people in an arena. And I was making $3 a book. That's another $18,000 on top of my speaking fee that I was able to earn that day. And you're giving people the ability to take you home and reinforce what they learned, because it goes by really fast when you're doing live presentation. Yes. And then also share it with their family. Because we always want your wife or your husband, your partners to be thinking the same way you are, so that everyone's on the same page. And I think the last reason to write a book is simply to have impact. Like you can't get to every person, but if you write a book in Mumbai and someone in Goa or Chennai or Bangalore or Delhi reads it, you've had impact with people that you wouldn't have had impact with otherwise. So if the issue comes up, self-publish, have a major publisher, there's arguments on both sides of that. You make more money if you self-publish, it'll come out sooner. It's harder to just, there's a little more distribution challenge, et cetera. But, there's lots of people that, lots of online people that tell you the pros and cons of that. But I definitely think you should have a book. I also think in today's world, a book is not enough. You've got to have the videos. You have to have online courses. And if this pandemic continues, some people say it could be a year. Some people say it'd be 2 years. It could be over in 6 months. We don't know. There's a lot of people working on vaccines, but the vaccines are going to take a while. To make vaccines for 8 billion people, just even the syringes to do 8 billion injections is going to take a little while. We saw what happened with face masks and all that kind of stuff. So I think that it's good to be prepared. And also you want to be able to make money while you're sleeping. So every day while I'm asleep, 5 or 6 people sign up online, click to buy for one of our courses. And then we also have campaigns where we send them out, with a lot more of a launch campaign, et cetera. But I would say literally now 3/5 of our income comes from our online work.
Amazing. So Jack, if you had to start off from today, from the scratch, what steps would you take? Like leaving aside legacy that you've built, if you had to start from the scratch today, what would you do?
Well, what I would do is what I did before, with one difference called the internet. When I started out, phones still had wires on the end of the receiver, we didn't even have cell phones yet. let alone the internet. So it's much easier today. It's a more crowded field as a result of it, but it's much easier to start out. But I would definitely hone your craft, really practice and work. I mean, I used to take, when I first discovered there was this stuff called human potential, self-development, I took 17 weekend workshops that first year. And next year I went to work for W. Clement Stone, who was my mentor. And also he hired me in his foundation to teach success principles to kids and teachers. And he made the mistake of saying, you can take any workshop you want, the foundation will pay for it. I took 38 weekend workshops. If I wasn't teaching, I was in a work. And so I found out by studying how others did it. I watched them do it. I learned from them. And I was learning myself and looking what worked in my life, what didn't work. So I was constantly learning new things and applying them. I remember the first time I learned about guided visualization. I came home, I was in graduate school, knocked on the door of the woman across the hall who was also a doctoral candidate and said, I just learned some really cool stuff. Can I do it with you? And she said, sure. And so I'm leading her through these guided visualizations. I wanted to see if they work, could I do it? And so be willing to experiment with friends and family. My wife and I did couples workshops for a number of years, and we practiced by inviting 8 couples that were a friend of ours to our living room for a weekend and did all the exercises we thought would work with them. We learned some worked better than others and we tweaked them and so forth. But, and we charged like $100, I think,
Okay.
And then we ended up doing them for organizations like the Young Presidents Organization. They brought us to Dubai and to Morocco and to New England and all over the world because we had developed this. But we had to start somewhere, and you're not going to be perfect when you start. I love this phrase that Alex Mandossian came up with, that every master was once a disaster. And so, you've got to be willing to be in a learning space. And that's hard for the ego. The ego wants to be perfect now and doesn't want to do things you're not perfect at. But you have to be willing to be a learner and make mistakes along the way, and you learn from that. And obviously, getting good coaching, good training will help you avoid a lot of that. So I recommend working with the masters. Another thing that Alex said, but you learn faster with a master.
Yes.
You've seen these books where it says it takes 10,000 hours to become a master. I think you can become a master faster than that if you're working with people who are masters, as opposed to working on your own. So, working with the people who really know what they're doing. So I would say, I would do that. I would definitely put myself at the feet of other masters and see how they're teaching, learn their content, make it your own by using it. Then you can speak from your own experience. I would definitely develop an online community as fast as possible. The usual things we talk about, Facebook and Instagram. Yes, yeah. The big thing now is Instagram. That's where the younger people are. Yeah. And there's eyeballs there, and Facebook's actually losing eyeballs. So that I have done over 1,000 radio and TV interviews. So even if they were just small little things when you're starting out, now I do podcasts with people that have, millions of followers. But when you're starting out, you may have to do it with people that only have 5,000 followers, but you're learning how to do it. And you're also reaching people in the process. Learn how to close online. It's one thing. I don't think it helps you a lot to do 1,000 podcasts if you're not leading people to work with you, enroll with you, purchase your product, purchase your book, take your online course. So study closing techniques, study online marketing. I would definitely do that. It took me a while to get there. I was, the old dog new tricks thing, but I've learned how to do all that now, and I'm very good at it. And so the idea is you've got to be willing to learn and to grow. And let me just see if I wrote down anything else here that I thought was important. I think I said most of this. Yeah, and I would say go back again to make sure you write a book. I wrote a book in 1876. I wrote my first book. That's before many of you listening to this were born. Yes. And the reality was that book took off and sold 400,000 copies. It was a book of educational techniques on how to build self-esteem in the classroom. And it made me an instant expert in the field of education. Well, I wouldn't say instant, over a couple of years. But the reality is that book was critical. And then I did free talks for associations and meetings and for counselors associations, teachers associations. And then what would happen is I would do a presentation at a state conference for free, but then there'd be someone there from a school district who would hire me and pay me my fee to actually come train their teachers. So a lot of times things you do for free when you're first starting out actually lead to paid gigs. I'll do a lot of fundraisers, and at fundraisers, you find a lot of CEOs of companies that end up hiring you to do what you did for free at their fundraiser for their charity. So, be willing to give it away. I always say, if you're not willing to give it away for free to start, you probably don't want to do this anyway because you're not passionate about it.
Yes.
And but at the same time, don't get a reputation for everything's free, because you do want to make a living at it.
Thank you, Jack. I think this was an amazing interview. All of you watching this, you would have seen the journey, and even the insights that Jack has shared is phenomenal.
So one of the things that's really important to be successful in life is to make decisions and take action. And if you think about your life right now, everything you're currently experiencing is a result of the decisions you made and the actions you took in the past. And, if you want your life to be different, you have to do something new. If you keep on doing the same old, you're going to keep on getting the same old. 2 plus 2 is always going to equal 4. And if you want your life to improve, so you're getting 6 instead of 4, you have to change your 2 to a 4. So that's 2 plus 4 equals 6. So the reality is, for you to have a future that's going to be profoundly different for you, I would encourage you to make a decision today, take the action. Martin Luther King, the great civil rights leader in America, who was inspired by Gandhi's nonviolent resistance to the British that led to India's freedom, said, just take the first step in faith. You don't have to see the whole staircase. Just take the first step in faith. And we have a 10-day money-back guarantee, which means that if you don't feel that the course is worth what it we say it is, you can ask for your money back. So there's really no risk. The only thing you're risking is a little bit of time. And because of the pandemic, we have a lot more time. Most of us are at home. And so I would really encourage you to get involved. I hope you can know that I've been doing this for years. I wish you could trust me. I think you can trust Siddharth. You've been working with him. And we wouldn't be bringing this to you if we know it didn't work. So I have this wonderful cartoon I always share that I'll just tell you about. It shows 2 dinosaurs sitting on a rock. In the distance, you see this boat, which is Noah's Ark, floating off in the distance. There's 2 giraffes and 2 camels and 2 elephants, 2 monkeys, and it's floating off in the distance. And one dinosaur looks at the other and he goes, "Oh crap, was that today?" And they missed the boat. So we don't want you to miss the boat for your future. We want you to take advantage of this offer and take your life, your coaching, your speaking, your training to the next level. So I encourage you to do that.
Thank you. Thank you, Jack. All of you, if you're watching this, we have a special link exclusive only for India, and which this offer you're not going to get anywhere else. So Jack, first of all, thank you so much for giving this special offer only for our community over here. And the other thing is, I want to thank you for your time. The valuable insights that you're given is truly going to help every person watching this to upgrade their life, upgrade their skills, and upgrade their coaching business as well. So thank you, Jack, once again. Yes.
It's been my pleasure. Thanks for inviting me, Siddharth. I appreciate it.
Thank you.